right, Chinchy, we're back, brother. We're back for a big one.
Yes, sir.
We're back for a big one today, brother. We got it. First off, we got our good friend. And it's funny that he's our good friend because we feel like this guy's kind of like two guests for us today.
Yep.
He's one of the best starting pitchers ever, and also one of the best closers probably ever to play the game.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up getting into the Cooperstown.
Yep.
If you're that guy, you get the Cooperstown. 96 NL Cy Young, led the league in the wins twice. In 96, had 24 wins. Woo. Silver Slugger in 97, which I know we got to talk to Smoltzy about that because I know he loves that stuff. 4 seasons with over 200 Ks. You got to be kidding me. 276 in 96. Led the league in saves of 55 in 2002. 10 seasons with at least 200 innings. Listen, this guy plays ping pong. He's a great golfer. He's a great dart player. Bocce, whatever you do. You play John Smoltz, you're in for a dogfight. Let's introduce my man, Hall of Famer, Johnny Smoltz. What's up, Johnny?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm still at that age where I still think I can compete in everything, but I'm starting to check boxes off to say let that one go.
Nice.
Oh, I love it too. So Smoltzy, man, for everyone that hasn't kept up with John Smoltz, what have you been up to? You know, at this time, at this stage of your life, what are you doing nowadays?
So I'm trying to navigate a baseball season both with MLB Network and Fox, and a combination of doing games in studio. I'm currently on a 6-week road trip that ends Saturday. I've been trying to squeeze in some golf tournaments, some champion tours. I'm trying to pull a little Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson / even though it's not 2 sports, but 2 jobs. It's been an unbelievable run. And of course, you know, COVID has complicated things with the travel and spending as much time as I can at the network in chunks so that I can get the work in and then, you know, relax a little bit. But this is the longest road trip I've ever been on since I started doing this gig, other than, playing baseball during the Olympics. Going back to the Olympics, we were on a 21-day road trip, you know, when we had the Olympics in 1996 as a player. So, yeah, it's really been a challenge to navigate kind of physically more than anything, hotel beds and waking up a little stiff, trying to get in the weight room, but that has not worked out really well. I'll be honest with you, that is not. I like to say that COVID stole my desire to get back in the workout room, but my wife is putting that to rest by putting me back in the weight room. And, you know, Case, the hardest challenge for guys that played as long as we did, I'll be honest, man, I worked my tail off to play 21 years, and now it's been very difficult to have the enthusiasm to get back in the weight room and get back in shape.
Yeah, no, it's true. But Smoltzy, I saw you right before COVID, and you were jacked. No, I'm not kidding. I was like, I remember coming in the makeup room one day. I'm like, what's Smoltzy doing, man? This guy's doing something different. He must be locked in with a personal trainer or something. Like, what were you doing? Because you were getting like jacked, and I saw it.
I was working on my golf machine that I had, and I was really trying to get into once you master 21 days of anything, like you get over the habit of what you weren't doing and what you are doing. And I felt great about, you know, playing golf. And then all of a sudden I got knocked out for a while and then just really didn't get back in the gym for quite some time. And I'm really trying to kick myself back into shape, because the fact that I want to still do what I'm doing in golf, you know, everyone kind of assumes golf's kind of a sissy sport and that you don't have to really be in shape, but you got to walk a lot and you're on your feet a lot. And coming off of Lake Tahoe and just the losing in a playoff was rough. But I'm getting back in. It's I'm motivating myself to get back in shape so that ping pong, tennis. I've given up basketball. I retired basketball.
Oh.
But anything else that involves a ball, I'm in. Bowling.
Nice.
Anything else, I want to be the guy.
Smoltzy, I want to stay on that for a second because I think it's fascinating, bro. Like, listen, I showed up at Oakmont a few months ago, and they're like, "Oh yeah, hey, Sean Casey," and I have a lefty set and a righty set of clubs, and the caddy was like, "Hey, bro, what's this?" I'm like, "Listen, man, I don't know if I'm lefty or righty. Like, I used to hit a baseball lefty, but I think I golf righty because I'm so bad lefty." He's like, "Hey, man," he's like, "Pick one," because I ain't carrying two sets of clubs. I'm like, "Oh, you got it." So I end up picking up. I say, "Hey, give me the righty clubs and the lefty putter, right?" But I think the one thing I realized, Smoltzy, is golf is such a hard sport. It is like it is so hard. And one thing I know is, as a hitter, I used to work on my swing all the time from 15 years old till I retired when I was 34. And developing that skill was like a constant thing. And when I look at golf now, Smoltzy, I go, I can't imagine putting the work that I put into being a Major League Baseball player into golf. And I know that's what you're doing. And you're playing, are you on the Senior Open right now, or you're trying to be on the Senior Open?
Well, I've tried to qualify for. I made the Senior Open 3 years ago, and I'm trying to qualify for events. And I'm going to actual Q school in November.
Wow.
The Champions Tour is something I'll never play full time, but if I can get good enough to be able to compete at that level, that's my goal. But you kind of nailed it. It's just something they've done their whole lives. They're over 50 now. They're the best in the world, and I'm trying to compete with what I know and through baseball. Look, as a pitcher, you could throw every 15 seconds, right? Unless the game gets slowed down. You're creating the tempo. As a golfer, you have 5 minutes between shots, and all you do is think about things, and it's a very mentally draining and tough sport. Even if it's not physically demanding, it's mentally demanding. And I use some of the things that I was able to use in baseball, but not all of them have worked. And I'm trying to learn this whole new gig of waiting 5 minutes to create a shot and then forgetting the shot and doing that over and over and over again. And next, so you know, 5 hours later, you finished 18 holes.
Hey, one thing, being on a producer side of like sports TV, anybody I've ever worked with from your guys' end, the professional athlete afterwards, like you guys have had adrenaline rushing through your bodies for 15, 20, 30 years, even, from high school all the way on. And all of a sudden it's gone. So how stressful was that adjustment to go, I need to find a way to get some form of that thing going for me?
Yeah, it's a great question, because right away I transitioned after retiring to high-level competition in golf. Golf, but also basketball. I played in 3 leagues. That was 3 times a week. I played in the over 40, then I played in the over 50, and it was pretty intense. That kind of filled the competition. We are adrenaline junkies, and for the most part, you know how to handle that competition so that it doesn't get to the level where once you walk away, I know a lot of guys have struggled with what do they do in that transition. The lights are no longer on. And I was able to walk away from baseball knowing I poured everything into it. I didn't regret walking away from that, even though I felt like I could squeeze in a couple more years. But being able to fill it in a competition in some way definitely was needed at that point. So I poured into basketball. And I found it was getting a little too intense. I never trash talking anything that I ever did on the sport. And I started trash talking back at these guys that were trying to let me have it. And I realized at the age 48, it was getting a little too much. And so golf fills that, whether it's a tournament, club championship, playing with your buddies. Every day golf for me has allowed me to have that it factor for that day. Like, this could be my best round. And I've had people say, hey, why don't you just play 9 holes? 9 holes? What if I'm 5 under at 9 holes? I got to play 18. There's no way I can play just 9 holes. So I fill it there. I want to play. My goals in golf, besides the playing the highest level, I want to shoot my age starting at about 66, God willing, if I'm able to be physically able to do that. So I'm a goal-oriented I still dream a lot about what I want to do. And I think that keeps me young and motivated to kind of continue to pursue the best of whatever I'm doing, whether it's the best analyst or whether it's the best golfer or whatever that next journey is and that next challenge.
Smoltzy, I want to rewind a little bit, because your journey to the big leagues is really, really, really cool and a little unorthodox, I think, because I know in my household, I loved baseball because my dad loved baseball. We'd go outside, play catch on the side of the house, playing wiffle ball. He was from Long Island, New York, so we talk about his dad loving the Brooklyn Dodgers and him growing up watching the Yankees and stuff, and and I used to grow up watching the Pirates. But your parents weren't huge baseball fans, right? They weren't like big athletes. Can you take us back to John Smoltz as a kid growing up in your household, out there in Michigan, and your parents' influence on you, and then how did you become a great baseball fan?
Yeah, it's pretty unique. My parents were both musicians. I say it all the time. I learned a lot through, they were accordion teachers and accordion players. So it's a dying art now. There's not really much of that goes on.
You play the accordion, bro? Can you play?
I played it when I was 4 till 7 years old. And I'm only going off of what they say. They said I was really good and I won trophies and competitions and all that. But I'll tell you what it was unique about playing the accordion is the discipline and the practice and the time I had to put in every single day. And I tell this to other parents whenever I speak, whether it's at banquets or whether I'm speaking in baseball or talking about sports. My parents didn't teach me, which was huge. They knew what they knew. They were good at it. They were very well versed. They let somebody else teach me what they loved and what they knew, which was vital at the time, because you can get pretty burned out when you're living vicariously through your parents. And we see a lot of that happen in life and in sports. But the other awesome thing was I got tired of it and wanted to play baseball. For whatever reason, I watched it on TV. I'm a self-taught in everything that I've ever done. I took a ball out and started learning how to throw against a brick wall after watching a game that I just watched, the Tigers. They let me do that, thinking maybe, well, it'll just pass, but I'll return back to music. Well, lo and behold, I had a gift they didn't know, and I could throw a baseball pretty well. And they let me pursue it. They let me pursue my passion, which came out of nowhere. And it wasn't something that they were familiar with. They didn't know anything really about baseball, but they gave me every opportunity to pursue it. And as a wiry little kid, literally, I was the smallest kid on every team till my junior year in high school. I would just go out against a brick wall or find a way. Like I had a brother and a sister, and they were both very athletic, but it wasn't like we did a bunch of things together. If I was bored, I would go out in my front yard, which is a small house, and I would kick a football into the tree thinking that it just got blocked and try to go find it, and try to, or I'd throw a ball against the wall and emulate a game, or I'd play one-on-one basketball by myself. I was always imagining hitting the shot, throwing the pitch, getting the hit. And, it just kind of been my DNA when I got to a point of playing competition at 5th grade. It started for me. And I pursued it ever since.
Wow, it is amazing. When your junior year, though, when you said you started to finally develop, did you see yourself being more of a position player, or did you know that you had just a gift? God had given you that gift and that right arm. I mean, is that when you started to feel?
Yeah, I literally was at that point. I was a two-sport guy. I played basketball and baseball, and basketball was my first love. Baseball was what I was better at, but basketball intrigued me in a sport where you had to be a little bit of a thinking. I wasn't the fastest guy. I didn't jump the highest, but I loved the kind of general mindset of a point guard, and I loved playing basketball and all that it had at that point in my life. I planned on going to college to play basketball and baseball at Michigan State. But I was a really good hitter, and I could play shortstop and second. I played every position but catcher. But I eventually knew that if I was going to excel in one thing or the other, it was going to be pitching, based on the way that I could throw a baseball at that point. Look, back when we played, 88 was
gas,
like 98, exactly. in high school. And whether I maintained that velocity or not, I was growing into my body. I grew 7 inches between my sophomore and junior year. So I sprouted up pretty quick. And it was at that point that I knew I had a chance to go to the next level. Everyone dreams to play in the big leagues, but you got to achieve levels first. And I thought that dominating my own age group was one thing, but getting outside my age group, it was really in Johnstown, Pennsylvania at the AAA tournament where I recognized, A, I needed to be better. B, I was exposed to outside talent that was unbelievable. I'd never been outside of Michigan. I was 15, 16 years old playing in a 20 and under tournament. And it's the first time I ever saw scouts, and it's the first time I ever got my lunch really handed to me. I gave up 4 2-run homers in the 4th inning. And I went home, and I told my dad, I said, all right, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I need to be better. I need you to push me a little bit. It's the first time I asked him, to push me, because he never did anything like that. He just was encouraging and supportive. And it was a great lesson for me. And ironically, every great lesson I learned was through humiliation, like getting my brain speed in, or a bad moment, or a blown save. And it was every one of those moments that pushed me to be better, instead of drive me deeper into a hole where you never want to come out. So I've never been afraid to be outside my comfort zone and expose myself. And I tell people all the time, if you're going to be great, dare to be great, you've got to get outside your comfort zone, and you've got to experience those uncomfortable moments to create growth. And once you grow and learn from it, you never look back, and you become somebody that understands through perseverance and through those trials how it shapes you. And it shaped my career. I can point to about 4 different events that shaped my career.
It's amazing you say that, Smoltzy. I mean, I go back to I was one of the best players, probably 11, 12, 13. At 14, I'm a freshman in high school. I'm not playing. The coach doesn't know the guys that have played well in Little League. So I'm not playing at all my freshman year. And I remember coming home to my dad and saying, you know what, Dad, can you go talk to the coach real quick? Because he's not playing me. And you've seen me play all the way up. I'm one of the better players. And my dad, I'll never forget it. It's like that conversation, like you coming back to your dad and saying, hey, show me the way. Like I remember coming home to my dad and saying, could you go talk to the coach? And he said, you know what, Sean? I'm not going to talk to the coach. He goes, you're not glaringly better than the kid they're playing. So he's like, what could you do about it? And there was a batting cage a batting facility that just opened up in the town next to me. He's like, listen, he goes, I'll make a deal with you. I'll buy you as many tokens as you'll use as every day. And if you hit, I'll buy you as many tokens you want. But if you stop hitting, it deals off. But sure enough for me, Smoltzy, it was that conversation with my dad saying, hey, you're not glaringly better. Start working harder. Put the time in. Get the repetition. And for me, when I look back at that conversation, had my dad called the coach and said, hey, I want my son to play. And the coach says, yeah, you're right. Maybe I don't play in the big leagues, because that moment of growth for me was the first step of starting to put the time in to really, hit every day. So you're right.
There's no doubt. I mean, I played 3 sports growing up, and each sports had its challenges. And beautiful thing for me in Michigan was each season had a sport. So I couldn't just be consumed with baseball. When baseball was over, I left it. And then I played basketball. When basketball was over, I left it and I played football. And through all of those different entities, I was able to figure out for myself what I needed to do for each sport to be better. And then, of course, when you focus on the end result of being a professional baseball player after being drafted, it really navigates you in a way of it's formed your discipline. You are who you are. And I've seen, and I know you've seen, way more talented players in the days of our minor leagues. And why they didn't make it is a lot to do with a lack of discipline and a desire to be great. And putting aside certain decisions that aren't advocating for the best of your future. And my parents helped shape that, and I'm grateful for that, because when I got into the business of baseball and the navigation of the minor leagues, I was so hyper-focused on my goal that it allowed me to stay away from the pitfalls that can occur and drag you away from your common goal.
When you talk about that, I know for me too, routine was so big. When you got into the minor leagues, was your discipline, obviously, but when did you really get that John Smoltz routine, of pitching every 5th day?
Yeah, that took a while. I'm a guy that likes to have fun. I'll laugh. You can talk to me the day I pitch. I'm really all about the moment I compete, I'm locked in. But everything up until that point, I don't mind having fun, being a teammate, working out. But the routine aspect of every 5 days and what I needed to do really started to kind of kick in around the 3rd year of my big leagues. I was searching for when to eat, when to work out, when to do certain things that you kind of take for granted. Ironically, in the minor leagues, I learned golfing and fishing. I didn't do either one of those. Never golfed in my entire life and never fished my entire life. And all of a sudden, I'm in Lakeland, Florida, and I've got 4 days of boredom. Like, what am I going to do to fill that up? You pitch once every 5 days. And so I learned those 2 things to occupy my time that kept me fresh, because I was never a guy that would think pitching 24/7 every single day. If I was a position player, I'd have to have an diversion somewhere, because I don't want to be thinking so much that I become paralyzed by analysis, or by information. So I think about my 3rd year, I kind of settled into a routine. I knew what I would do. I wasn't a superstitious, had to do X, Y, Z. I was able to manipulate and change and learn my body and listen to my body. That was the biggest thing that I gravitated to. I knew my body, I knew my brain, and there were components of it that didn't make sense to a lot of people, but made sense to me. And it's the reason I played as long as I did.
Wow. This is something I was looking down ahead for, but it fits right here, because I know you worked with a guy. Like, I think there's so many guys nowadays, and this is what I always admired about you, Smoltzy. There's so many guys now that have guys outside of the team. They got their own hitting instructor, their own pitching instructor, their own workout guy. Johnny, I know early on you did this probably before other people were doing it. I know you had a guy named Chris Verna who I worked out with in the off season down in Boca when I lived down in Jupiter. But I know you worked with Chris way before I did, and he was a guy that kind of kept you going. Can you talk about Chris Verna and how he helped you with recovery and all the things that he helped you with in your career.
Yeah, back in the Stone Ages, it seems like we didn't have a lot of technology from kind of rehab specialists, and we were learning a lot about people and injuries. And I was a very loose-jointed guy that could throw a baseball fairly firm, 92 to 94, without grunting. But that looseness and that liveliness that I had was an asset and a liability, which meant I have a lot of moving parts. And they wanted to have surgery on my shoulder early in my career, and I was like, no, time out. No, you have surgery on my shoulder, you never hear from me again. Yeah. So my agent at the time, Ed Keating and Miles Shota, we went and searched and researched and found Chris Verna. They found him for me. He was a stretch therapist. He had been in the training world in the Seattle Mariners, and he had kind of dedicated his life to the shoulder program and different things around pitching and injury prevention. To give it, I mean, people won't believe this because it seems like it's a fairy tale what I'm about to say. My shoulder used to sublux, okay? Similar to what Tatis Jr. is having on his left shoulder. Mine used to come out of socket when I would throw from time to time. Not a good thing, but it would pop back in. That's the loose joint that I would have, the flexibility. My arm would flop back, my elbow. I could do things like throw a football unbelievably far just naturally because of genetics. But that was becoming a problem in the world of baseball because they thought, oh, shoot, this is too loose, too crazy. We got to go in and tighten up his shoulder. I said, no. So anywhere between 10 to 13 times of shoulder subluxation and not to the point where it would rip or tear anything. In other words, the shoulder has a little clip there that keeps your shoulder from moving. Mine was flat, so mine was doing more of that.
Oh, my God.
And he developed a program in one off season that I adhered to, and I went from like 12 to 2 to never. It's subluxing again. So I went strength training without getting bulk and a flexibility program that allowed me to because your left hip and right shoulder work together and vice versa. So Chris and I have been together ever since. And through my golfing endeavors, through pitching, it's the reason I pitched 21 years. If I had that surgery early in my career, you and I are not having this conversation, right. Wow. And I'm not working for MLB Network or Fox. A lot of things changes. So, yeah, we've kept in touch. It's brilliant. It was state-of-the-art then, and we have all this technology trying to prevent injury, and ironically, we have more injury than ever before in our sport. And he had a simple process that allowed me to get to the maximum liability. And I got so strong without bulking up that it enabled me to inevitably put off my shoulder surgery till 2008, which I ended up having. And then I came back from and then called it a career after that. So, yeah, very fortunate and transitioning in that whole process.
So when you hear the guys, it happens every spring training. There's a pitcher. Well, he put on 40 pounds of muscle this offseason. That must drive you crazy, right?
It does. I mean, again, I would be an advocate of whatever facility, whatever information, whatever technology. If it cut injuries in half, I'm like, sign me up, okay? But it's not. Everything we're doing in the game, unfortunately, is increasing the injury because we're chasing the reward system that currently happens to be in Major League Baseball. John Casey and myself in our era, we were taught to play 25 years, 21 years, to play as long as you can. Make them rip the jersey off your back. So our preparation and our ability to play was for long-term survival. And I cared more about long-term longevity than I cared about short sprints of dominance. And I think that's the one tug of war right now. Guys are trying to get in the league because the reward system says this is how you do it. But nobody's paying attention enough to the injury rate. In our day, 3.5 years was the average major league career, which by terms of years is not that long. Today, it's got to be way less than that because everybody that's played the game, they take that into account. So, yeah, could I have trained to throw 98, 99 and had a shorter career? Absolutely. And I believe more in baseball being a fast twitch muscle sport instead of a big muscle sport. And therefore, if you're training big muscles to hit the ball 520 feet, you might, but you're going to break down a lot more often than the guy who trains for the fast twitch, flexible strength. And, our sport is different than the other sports. And I think, unfortunately, more people have kind of gone towards the beach body and look great and throw baseballs without a jersey on, which I still can't believe exists, but it does. And more power to them. They can throw a ball through a brick wall. And I'm not one of those haters. I want to see whoever it is play 20 years. I don't want to see the brilliance and greatness of our athletes, which is far greater than it's ever been in our day, disappear in 5 years. I just don't want to see that. Look at Greg Maddux. All right, I pick on him because he's the greatest pitcher I've ever played with, but that body is not a body by chance. Okay? That body did very minimal stuff to make him the best he's been because it was sports specific. And the body composition from the day that we played to the day before we played to where we are today, it is insane how much there is no body fat, right? I mean, the Lance Lynn's of the world are sticking out because the dude knows how to pitch and he doesn't get hurt and he's going to make his money because he's going to stay healthier.
And he's basically throwing Lance Lynn's throwing a cutter and a sinker, right? I mean, he's basically throwing a fastball, four-seamer, cutter, sinker, and everything's pretty hard. Smoltzy, what about – that was such good stuff there, and there's a couple things I want to pick on there. What do you think of the starters nowadays? You know, it seems like, you know, if we see a guy go 8 innings, it's like 8 innings. That's unbelievable. Like, I know when you guys were starting and you talked about Maddux and Glavine and you guys – you know, you're trying to go complete games. These guys are going – they're not seeing the third time around the order now, you know, whatever the analytics say. What do you think of the way they're treating starters nowadays in the big leagues?
Well, the guys don't have a chance because this is what they're being taught. So I don't blame the players. The reward system is exactly this. Throw as hard as you can. You let it eat for as long as you can, and we get somebody else to do the same thing. They figured out that form of philosophy works in a puzzle of how they're putting players together. They don't have to be as prepared, and they don't have to worry about them for 6 years because they know the next dude's coming right behind them. So if you get hurt as a pitcher in 4 years, well, hang with them. You know, the strong will survive. The problem is, at some point, it reaches a point of no return, and we're getting pretty close. So I'm not one that says that, you know, everybody should be pitching 8 innings. It is the reward system that exists today, and if we were playing today, we would either be forced to be an outlier or follow the crowd. I think guys like Adam Wainwright at 40, soon to be 40 years old, has pitched 10 games already over 7 innings. And that shouldn't happen at his age, but he knows how to pitch and the value that it means to his organization. And again, I keep saying to every young pitcher, if you want to play 20 years at the rate you're going, no chance. The body can't sustain that velocity. But organizationally and philosophically, that's not going to change until there's a shortage of arms. And I can say it till I'm blue in the face and call it the way I think and give my opinion, but it really is birthed out of not everyone should pitch like our generation or 20 years before our generation. I'm concerned about the fallout and the gap that we're creating between greatness and the ability to stay healthy. I mean, Tommy John's like a Band-Aid now. Oh, well, you got Tommy John, put a Band-Aid on.
Yeah.
Second recipient Tommy John's is like, yeah, you know, it's not good, but we're having more of those, and guys are persevering through that. I think eventually, either through rule changes or the fact that we're going to go back to see how we can retrain these guys for a task that is very capable, by the way. But when you're training for 5 and 6 innings, that's what you're going to get. So it really comes down to organizationally, this is what they're asking players to do. They're also asking players to be in the game younger than ever. And when you're forced in the game younger than ever, you're going to have this filterization system of guys are going to, I call it de-developing greatness, because we're rushing you to the big leagues because you have a gift, but you haven't developed that gift. It's like exposing film too soon. The film goes bad. And we are not developing those guys to do their job in a way we're advocating the organization benefits from Sean Casey giving me 200 innings. Sean Casey not maximizing every pitch. But if I'm telling Sean Casey to do that, then it's up to, you to decide how you want to get about your career and how quickly you want to get to the big leagues.
It's interesting you talk about development, because I came up with the Cleveland Indians, and obviously when you came up too in the minor leagues, Smoltz, it was that you developed guys, and when they were ready for the big leagues, you got them there. And I think nowadays they're bringing guys up so fast, and I think it can be a tax on your not so much your physical abilities. It's a different ballgame up there mentally in the big leagues. And then you're rushing when you rush kids too quick, I think that's what they're not ready for. I think physically they might be, but mentally, the grind of every day, the third deck, everything is so different in the big leagues. Facing 96 to 98 out of the pen every night. Every guy that comes in is 96, 98. The starters are better. I just think when you're rushing guys to the big leagues now, hey, I'm not so much worried physically as I am what are you doing to them mentally for them to play 10 to 15 years in the big leagues. And that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, no doubt. And we have an information overkill with a lot of absolutes that don't make sense for everybody. And we've created a gap of information that basically one size fits all. That's a dangerous place. The game usually self-corrects, and I believe in it, but it's just taking so long because of the information that we have. And these kids are playing showcase games. They're in these prime time, all showcasing their individual talents and trying to get, to the level that we once did. And I think eventually, there will be subtle changes. Organizations big when everyone's zagging. I am fairly confident of that. But what we have is a lot of negative information that when you talk about it, it's statistical facts, but that somehow when you talk about it, you're hating on the game that we all love. No, it's a statistical fact that no one wants to deal with the outcome of it. So I call it like anytime you do things, you have unintended consequences. Well, through analytics and through some of the things, we have unintended consequences that everyone wants to go, don't pay attention to that. Yeah, all right, the games are taking longer. All right, yeah, there's more strikeouts. Yeah, there's less action. All right, there's 3-2. When you state the obvious, somehow you are the ambassador for hating a game that is stating the obvious. I'll never figure that out. But everybody in their quiet corner has these quick fixes that they'd like to see, but they never advocate for it because let the kids play slogan has taken over. And these guys are phenomenal athletes, to your point. But with it comes unintended consequences that baseball's trying to figure out right now. Never have I ever seen more gifted, more powerful, more athletic people playing a sport that is preaching an unathletic sport. Think about it. No speed, defenses clumped together, not much action. Like, we're not taking advantage of the great athletes by letting them be athletic on the field. That's my claim. If I draft Sean Casey and you're the greatest shortstop in the game, what competitive advantage do I have if everybody can be in a shift and I take away your ability to play a spot that could cover more ground than somebody else? So I think we're close to getting back to some of those things. But these guys, my gosh, Tatis Jr., Ohtani, I'm in awe of what they're doing, standing above the crowd in an era where, let's face it, velocity and power and all the information we're getting right immediately at our fingertips. And sometimes that drives the narrative.
Let's stay there for a second because Ohtani's doing something we've never seen before. And I think back to Smoltzy, how good of an athlete you are, how good of a hitter you were in high school, a basketball player, all that stuff. And I'm starting to think, is Ohtani starting to make scouts and organizations say, hey, listen, when you see a guy in high school that's really good offensively and defensively, and as a pitcher, maybe let's let him draft him as both and see what he can do? Or is Ohtani such a thing that we may never see again? What's your take on what Ohtani's doing, and what do you think about that? Other players starting to do that?
I hope it's not an outlier. I hope he breaks down some barriers of preconceived notions of what a player should do at this level. What he's doing, words cannot describe. I mean, I know how hard it was to pitch for 21 years. I felt like I was competitive to a point in hitting, but then once every 5 days, they don't care about you. You don't put the work in. It really is a novelty. Anyone in the National League that can do anything to kind of scare an opposing pitcher. But what he's doing is over the top. It's like the best way I can describe it is Mike Trout's the best player in our game, and he's making people forget about Mike Trout, which when Mike Trout comes back playing, you'll realize they got two of the best players on one team in the game, and praying they make the playoffs at some point so we can see these dudes do their thing. But I hope they take a look at things and think differently and allow. We're seeing more players play multiple positions. It used to be in the younger ages of sports. This is my biggest complaint. John Casey, you're this, and just focus on this. And that's all you do from the age 12 on up. So you don't really develop and tap into what you can do in other sports or other positions and see what the maximized ability you have. And maybe this will allow other athletes to break that shell. Green with the Reds. I know he hasn't been in the big leagues yet. He's throwing like 180 miles an hour, but he was that guy. He could play shortstop. He could hit. and they took away hitting from him, I understand, for a while. Then he went through the arm injury. We've got a guy in Tampa that was going to be a reliever, a left-hander, first baseman. I think, the patience of allowing something like this to happen today is less. This was a contractual obligation to get him over here. And I probably would guarantee no one would admit that, this will phase out and we'll just let him do X. Well, it hasn't phased out. He's going to do this for I don't know how long. At some point, the two will become more mediocre instead of great. He's great. I'd make this claim, and I will make this claim, and I don't care who thinks I'm crazy, because I've been called crazy way before, and I've been right a lot more than I'm wrong. If all he did was pitch, Sean, all right, he'd be the best pitcher in baseball, period. And people go, how can you say that? You got Jacob deGrom. All Jacob deGrom's been able to do is pitch. Yes, he's a good athlete, a former shortstop. He can hit a little bit, but he's got 6-7 years under his belt to become the greatest pitcher. This guy's got 30-some starts. And what he's doing is such a high level, and his arm is better than his bat, but his bat is outproducing his arm because we see his bat 5 times a week and his arm once. So my statement is a little flawed because we're never going to get a chance to see that come to fruition. But his greatest asset is his arm. But you can only use his arm once every 5 or 6 days. You can use his bat every single day. So that becomes his greatest asset. The dude is words just can't explain what he's doing.
There's a great tweet I saw. Somebody posted a couple weeks ago, and it was like, Ohtani just pitched 5 innings of no run balls, struck out 7, then went to right field, and he got a hit. And this guy responded, big deal. I used to do that every Saturday morning in 6th grade. But that's just how insane it is what he's doing,
It is.
So true. It's insane. And we talk. I love we talk about the Angels. Like, man, I hope at some point we see Ohtani, we see Trout on the big stage, because that's where I think you really start to define. We look at Trout as one of the greatest players of all time, but you got to see. I want to see him on the big stage. I want to see him in the World Series. I think that's where you start to define guys. And for you, Smoltzy, I really believe this is where you were defined. Like you were at another level in the postseason, and even with the 3-headed monster that you guys had, Maddox, Glavine, and you stuck out all the time. Can you take us? I want to go back to that 91 duel of you and Jack Morris, Game 7. Talk about. I got the chills, bro. Seriously, I just mentioned it. I got the chills. I remember watching it, and it's one of those games that you look back on it and you wonder if this day and age a game like this would ever have happened. They're not going to. Jack Morris goes the distance. You almost go the distance. Can you take us back to that, man? And 2 things here. Take us back to that game, and also take us back to the postseason mentality and why it's different.
Yeah, I said earlier, I wasn't afraid to fail. I wasn't afraid to get outside my comfort zone. As a kid, I put myself in every one of those big moments against the brick wall. I mean, when I tell you to the detail, I would stand on the curb because my parents wouldn't let me be in the street, and we had a small brick wall between the door and the garage. So it literally was about a batter's box wide. And I put a tape zone of tape in the brick wall. I was the announcer, the grounds crew, the GM, and the star player. I was the manager. And I made these pitches over and over again and imagine what it would be like to be in a big game, and always won those games. In my mind, I always won. I tell people, and I said in my book, I was 99-1 because I had to throw in a loss because no one would believe 100-0, right? Just to throw in a loss. But I take that forward. And in 1991, when you're the worst team in baseball for 3 years, you never think you're going to get these moments, right? You wish upon them. You just would be a fly on a wall on a winning team. Well, in 1991, people forget, I was 2-11 in the first half. I had a bad contract negotiation. I let it go to my every game. I was going to be different. I failed. I messed up. Well, in the second half, I go 12-2. And I reset my brain, and everyone talks about the sports psychologist and everything that went into that. That helped. That helped me get back on a mental train of pitching to win instead of pitching to lose. Well, I felt unbeatable in the second half. And I get to the regular season game, the clincher that gets us in the postseason. To me, the coolest thing about my generation of pitching, I gave up 5 runs or 6 runs and pitched a complete game that you don't even get to give up 3 runs.
No, you're out.
I pitched a complete game. Olsen jumps in my arm. We win the game to put us in the postseason for the first time in forever. Okay, that's step 1. Now we go into the postseason against the Pirates. I pitch in the postseason. I get an opportunity to pitch on 3 days rest, to pitch in Game 7, a dream. On the road in Pittsburgh, again, mindset is I'm unbeatable. This is what I want. I want this moment. I get a chance to pitch 9 innings again. And Olson jumps in my mind, my arms, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, here we go. We're going to the World Series. I pitch a shutout. Well, in Game 7 in a World Series, that's the dream. But nothing changed for me. Every one of those games, it was like I was in slow motion. Everyone else was in fast motion. Everyone else wanted to be the hero. I just wanted to be the guy. And I never thought about coming out of that game in Game 7. And it's the loudest, most chaotic moment of your life. And I was the most comfortable. Like my heartbeat was slower. Everyone talks about what was that like. It was everything that I said it was going to be at 7 to 10 to 12 years old.
Wow.
Like when I walk out, I don't know what it's like for a hitter going from the on-deck circle to the batter's box, but for a starting pitcher going from the clubhouse to the bullpen, it's that walk that I found special. Like I'm getting ready to prepare to go do something. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I'm walking in that moment of time where you can think to yourself, is that really gap or whatever that is to get to the bullpen? And I remember walking down, and Leo was at my side. He was nervous, as most people were in Game 7.
Leo was always nervous.
He was always nervous. And he said, how you feeling? What do you think? And I remember this statement like it was yesterday. There was a little 6 or 7-year-old girl singing the national anthem in Game 7. I said, if she can do that, I can do this. I literally lived for the moment. Now, just living for the moment doesn't prepare you or give you the ability to be great. You've got to want to be in the moment, but you also have to understand what the moment is. It's not life or death. It's not the last game you'll ever pitch.
Right.
But I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to lay it on the line and give my best effort and know that I'm giving my team a chance to win. And so when I came out of that game, it was certainly frustrating. I wish I would have had more years to go, Bobby, get off the mound, like Jack Morris did to his man.
Yeah.
But I sit here and go, I pitched 3 7th games in my career, which in and of itself, pretty lucky, pretty incredible to have those opportunities. And in 3 7th games, I only gave up 2 runs and only won 1 game. Like when you think about the outcomes, sometimes don't match your performance or match where you think. And I think about those outcomes all the time, like, oh, what could have been had we done this? And the playoffs to me, and you've been around enough guys, everybody who sits on a couch thinks they can do XYZ watching TV. You can't. Okay. It seems really easy in the moment, but I played with teammates that didn't want to be in that moment. Not every personality's cut out for that moment. You see it in every big moment of sports where people go down the stretch, whether it's in golf or taking a shot. People forget how many shots Michael Jordan missed. You know why? They remember how many he made, because he was willing to make those shots every single time. Even though he may have missed just as many, he was willing to take that on his shoulders. And I can't teach everybody what that's like, but I can speak to what it can be if you allow yourself to be in that moment and get outside your skin, get outside your personality. Not everyone's cut out for it. Just like not everybody can speak in front of 25,000 people. But in that arena, I was as comfortable. I wanted the ball, and no disrespect to Glavine or Maddox, they knew it. They knew I wanted the ball more than them, and they knew that I could do things differently at that time that they couldn't do physically. And it did give me a little bit of ability to kind of showcase my ability to step it up and kind of go to the next level with my stuff.
I'm fortunate for me, I was able to play in the World Series in 2006. So I know when people say, oh, it's just another game. No, it's not. The atmosphere that when you go out to batting practice, I remember, man, this is different. This is an elevated, the atmosphere, the adrenaline. And in the Metrodome at that time, now I must have been one of the loudest places ever. Yeah. I mean, how crazy it was. I remember, being in the box, and thank God at this time I was locked in, and I was really in that zone where all I saw was the ball and able to slow the game down. Johnny, when you talk about some of the big moments in that game, what was it about facing a guy with a couple guys on, little traffic on base, that you were able to slow things down and just live in that moment? Because I think That's the difference between a guy that wants to be here and a guy that just can't handle the pressure.
Yeah, the biggest thing, I kept it simple. Like, all right, so my mindset on the road, because you know it's going to be loud, is keep it to a dull roar. And people go, what do you mean by that? Well, if it's a dull roar, that means they're not getting excited about any rallies, and they're kind of like that. You could sense the crowd is anxious, but nothing's happening. So the dull roar, you're always going to hear the roar, but if you're paying attention to the peripheral, you're in trouble. And I literally did lock in. I wish I could do this every single game in a regular season. I couldn't, because here's how I explain it. I couldn't get to the end if I pitched every game like a postseason. I couldn't. It's just not physically possible. So I tried to win every game, but I settle it like this: 3-1 against Sean Casey regular game. I'm gonna come after you. You hit a homer, you hit a homer. 3-1 in the postseason, forget it. No chance. You're not beating me. I'm gonna make the pitch and face the next guy. So basically, keep it a dull roar, but at the same time, understanding the moment between you and the hitter and not getting lost in the what if and could be. And see, I think a lot of people, if they don't pre-think things of what could happen, they start thinking about what if. Oh, if I get what if. And that's a dangerous place to be. You can't think what if. You got to think I'm doing this and then deal with the what ifs when they happen. And I think that's a big difference for me, as I never got caught up in the what if. I thought of it as a great challenge.
Yeah, and just to jump in there, John, this is true or false. If you were facing a guy in the last week or two of the season who you know you'd face in the playoffs, you'd pitch backwards and sideways and try to screw him up, even if it meant you might lose that regular season game.
Oh, yeah. The longer you get in the game, the more you realize how you can play with other guys' minds, and just kind of do things. I did things late in the year knowing strategically I was going to face him, and just put that little why did he throw me a knuckleball? Or why did he do that? And just to create a little bit of doubt, because the cat and mouse game that was so prevalent that I missed so much. And it's really what I try to bring to the audience as a broadcaster is get inside the head of a pitcher and a hitter. And that two battle on a field, somebody has the edge. And the goal is to not let the other guy who knows that he's got the edge. So if I'm facing Sean Casey, I'm not comfortable, but I'm not going to let him know I'm not comfortable. And I'm going to create an aura that he doesn't know what I know. And really, as a broadcaster, I'm trying to bring the cat and mouse game that may not be as much as it used to be, because everybody's got an algorithm to a path to success, and they kind of plot everything out. I miss that. I miss the, oh my, how am I going to face Sean the fourth time? Forget the third time. How am I facing him the fourth time? And I'm never going to show him in the first time what I'm going to do to him in the fourth time, because if I do, he's got an advantage. And so, yeah, I learned from some veterans on how to do that. And I learned that in the moment, I had an Italian grandmother when she was alive that bless her heart, she used to get on me for my scowl. Like she said, you look like you're not having fun. And I used to try to tell her, I say, Grandma, I got to fake it, man. I got to look mean. I don't want them to think that this is some, but she put something in my head that forever, for the rest of time, about halfway through my career, take time to enjoy what you're doing. Like, you can smile in the middle of a big game. You can literally not be so intense that you're going to eat, an apple or eat the baseball. And I learned how to do that and balance that, because the preparation for me, and this just worked for me. If I had a big game and people go, no way did you do this, I took a nap before every big game. I'd be on the training room table. I missed Ted Turner's pregame speeches for Game 7. I was the most comfortable I will ever be that day taking a nap. And I was comfortable. And I never took it so seriously to where my life was ruined one way or the other based on, circumstances. So I did take that approach, and I certainly loved the moment. I did. I loved it. And I wanted to be the guy, no matter if I was 50% capable or 100% capable, I was willing to take whatever came with it and be, big enough man to say, I'll own it.
Smoltzy, can we go back? Because I want to go back to you as a pitcher, bro. Because I want to talk about you as a starter and you as a closer, because I faced both guys. And as a starter, I felt like there was a little bit, you knew you had to go 9 innings. You knew you were going to set me up for some pitches. You were going to set me up, fastball in, slider, sinker away, right? So, but then when I faced you as a closer, I'll never forget in Atlanta, probably the first time I faced you as a closer, You threw me fastball about 97 outside black at the knees. I'm like, that's unhittable. And then I got back in there. I'm like, here we go. Fastball black at the knees, second pitch. I was like, that's unbelievable. He freaking darted it twice. And then you went slider and punched me out, right? And I remember that same thing, dude. When I faced you, I was like, I'm in for a dogfight. Like, I'm ready to get in the box. We got a one-on-one wrestling match because John Smoltz is coming for me. And I felt like I was coming for you too. But as a closer, I felt like you were trying to wipe me out. I felt like it was like boom, boom, bam, get out of here. Like, and I remember when I faced Schilling or faced Randy Johnson, I felt that way too. Like Billy Wagner, guys with power stuff and then power secondary pitches were trying to wipe me out quickly. They weren't setting me up. Can you talk about your approach as a starter and then your approach as a closer?
Yeah, as a starter, I'm trying to survive the year. I'm trying to throw 260, 250 innings every year. That's what we trained for. That was the goal. That was the standard back then. And the only way to do that is to survive each game so that you're not tapping out or red line pitching. I call it RPM. You know, in your engine, I've said this before, there's a red line in your engine tachometer, because if you live in the red line, you're going to be going to the body shop and getting a new, engine because you're going to blow it out. And I think for me as a starter, I knew 35 starts was going to be given to me barring any injuries. And I had to maintain a certain level of figuring that out. And how do I get through that? So as a starter, for sure, I never concerned myself with maxing out every single time, striking you out 4 times. I just tried to get outs. I wasn't consumed with the information, and I wasn't controlled by the outcome of, hey, he's only striking out 8.5 guys per game. What's wrong with him? Or his velocity is only 92.7 miles an hour. As a closer, though, you can kind of let it eat each time because you know you only got 1 or 2 innings. But here's how I kept it simple. I wanted to be effective 5 times a week. So to do that, I'm coming after you. Now, I had the luxury of 14 years as a starter where people go, okay, the guy can command his fastball. I don't want to get to 2 strikes. So this was my motto. If I had a T-shirt of closer, it would be, it's going to happen fast, one way or another. I'm either closing the game or blowing the game in a record amount of time, because I'm not going to try to strike out the side. I'm not going to throw 30 pitches in an inning. I want to be effective, go strike one, get the first guy out, and I want to be nasty and know that you have to respect I'm going to throw strikes. So what does that do as a hitter? You're going to be more on attack, and you're going to want it less likely to get to 2 strikes. It worked. My first year, I threw 78 games as a closer.
Wow.
That's a lot. But when you add it up, I was averaging 7 to 15 pitches, 10 to 15 pitches an inning. So you can work a little bit better when you're not trying to make the world look like you're embarrassing everybody, and strikeout per 9 inning is 16.5, but you can't help your team but half the time. So we've gotten into the sexiness of stats and embarrassing guys with stuff, but what's the reality of the role? It should be to help your team win as many games as possible. And so I look back, because now we have these indirect, non-binding rules that each club has kind of adopted for the most part, saying, you know what, I'm not going to use my closer 3 times in a row. Why? Well, just because. I want to keep them healthy. But why? Is there scientific data behind it? Or is it a self-imposed rule to protect yourself to say that I want to keep my guy healthy throughout the year? Well, at max velocity and 100 miles an hour, I guess that's what they've come up with. But to not have a guy available just because of an unwritten rule, to me, doesn't make sense. And I look back at my chart, and as I look back at my chart, I couldn't believe it. Like how many times I was able to be used. I've done 3 in a row, a bunch, but it was a different era and it was a different mindset. So if I can give you an example of driving a car as a starter, take the same route, drive the speed limit, everything's comfortable, you're in complete control. And if you drive a car as a closer, might as well get in NASCAR, do 210 miles an hour, take a different route, go by the seat of your pants. It is that different, because the mindset every day is when you're called to do your job, you better be ready, you better fake it, and you better have a short memory, because when you don't get it done, they're going to ask you to go right back out there the next day to forget what you just did.
Wow. Who did you hate facing, Smoltzy? Who were some of the guys that were like, man, this guy gives me a lot of trouble?
Statistically, you could point to those obvious numbers like a Sean Green, wore me out. Any prototypical leadoff hitter that didn't like to strike out, wore me out. I like the guys who wanted to swing from the fences and swing from the first time they got in. Tony Gwynn was the easiest answer that just wore me out, because there was no conventional way to get him out. If I were to go back in time and face him again, it would be fastballs right down the middle. And I might even tell him, right down the middle, Tony, try to do something with that. Because if I threw him down and in, he pulled it in the corner. If I went away, he looped it over the third baseman's head. It was just a different style and a different pride. Guys didn't want to strike out, and it made it tougher on the pitcher. And I consider that era like a prototypical leadoff hitter that wouldn't hit homers but steal bases and make the rest of the guys in his lineup better. So those guys I didn't like at all. But I'm reminded of the Sean Green, like it's ridiculous what he did off me. And I remember this like it was yesterday, and I shared this statement with a bunch of guys when it happens to them. Hey, teammate would come to me and go, just sharing this message that Sean Green wanted to make sure you got the limo from the hotel to the park so that you show up and pitch today. Meaning he owns you and he can't wait to face you. But Sean Green was such a nice guy, he would never say.
That's so great.
By the way, real quick before you move on, Tony Gwynn 30 for 65 off of you, Smoltz. Does that sound right? Holy.
Yeah.
Not a lot of damage, though, probably. You know what I mean?
No.
Smoltzy,
444 though.
The one guy that I just thought was the best hitter that I've ever seen, regardless of background stuff, is Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
And I was always interested because Bonds crowded the plate. I mean, literally, he was so on top of the dish, and you being a guy that was so good at commanding your fastball and kind of you were able to crisscross both sides of the plate. How did you pitch him?
Well, not very well. I mean, I did well as far as averages, and I did well in the postseason when I post, which was more crucial than the 9 home runs I've given up, most home runs ever given up, along with Greg Maddux to Barry Bonds. I wasn't afraid of a challenge, and I probably should have been afraid more. I should have let my ego be in my back pocket. But I'll never forget this one set of an at-bat in the postseason. I'm closing now. And what Barry Bonds did is he took away my strength by you mentioning him being right on top of the plate, and his recognition of the strike zone was so good. I literally came up with a split finger because of him.
Wow.
And it changed my career. Like, it took me to another level. But I had no way of getting him out. Like, I really did.
But because of Bonds, you came up with the split.
Yeah, I knew I was going to face him in 91, 92. It seemed like didn't know how long he was going to stay with Pittsburgh. But this is a left-handed hitter that had power, speed, could do whatever he want. Post Barry Bonds, what he became to be. But this was a slender, athletic, Ken Griffey Jr. type style hitter that had power and average. And so I had to come up with something. And changeups didn't work. So I came up with a split. I'll never forget the first time he looked at me when I threw that thing. But it did change my whole career and platform after that. But Barry Bonds, in this one at-bat, I'll tell 2 quick stories. We're at the All-Star game, and he's taking on Mark McGwire in the home run derby. And at that point, they changed the rules a little bit to where he had to beat him twice. It was kind of convoluted and crazy, but Barry was pulling his typical Barry, and he came in saying, that's it, I ain't going back out, kind of grandstanding like he did. And I was just getting on him. And we've always had a good relationship where we would attack each other, and he appreciated, obviously he did because he hit 9 home runs, me attacking him. But he thought somehow I was rooting for McGwire. I don't know where the wires got crossed, but it was further from the truth. But he said something afterwards after he won it. I said, just go out there and win it like we know you're going to win it. He come back and he said, listen, next time I face you, Smoltz, he says, I'm going to hit a home run off you and do a pirouette at home plate. And I said, Barry, you know what? If you do that, more power to you. Next time I face you, if I strike you out, I might sit down on the mound. Sit down. He goes, matter of fact, I'm going to hit 2 home runs off you the next time I face you. I'm like, all right, whatever. All right. So season goes on. Now it's late September. We got our position in the playoffs. We're facing the Giants, and I'm pitching in Candlestick. And he hit 2 home runs.
No way.
And he came on the bus. It was getaway day. And he starts screaming, where's Smoltz? Where's Smoltz? And, I'm sitting there. I lost the game because of him. And he says, I told you I was going to do it. I told you I was going to do it. And then realized in front of the whole team, he's like, all right, guys, go get the ring. But he was a bad man. And he did what he said he was going to do. So there's nothing you can say other than he said he was going to do it.
Oh, it's unbelievable. What a great story, man. So fast forward in Smoltz a little bit. I appreciate your time because I feel like I could talk to you for 5 hours. You have so much unbelievable stuff. But I just want to get to Cooperstown because 2015, you get inducted into Cooperstown. And in that class, I believe it was you, Randy Johnson, Biggio, and
Pedro.
And Pedro. Oh, my God. What a class. I mean, that's one of the greatest classes ever to go into Cooperstown. So a couple of things here. Could you talk about the call when you got the call that you knew you were going in? And can you talk about the speech? Because what was it like to write that speech, and with the time limit you're allotted, during the ceremony?
Yeah, first on the call, I didn't really anticipate it was going to happen. I never let my mind wander like that. Look, I had a unique career. I never pitched for anything to get in the Hall of Fame. I pitched for rings. I still feel, short on that. But I thought we could have won more rings. But I wanted to win championships. I wanted to be the best teammate I could be, and all the rest could take care of itself. And when I did get the call, I almost didn't answer my home phone, because at that point I was always answering my cell phone, and I didn't even know, who would be calling me at my house. I saw a 202 number and I went, uh-oh. I better answer this. Glad I did. And I got the call and literally reacted no differently than I would react. I was either going to play men's City League basketball game at 5:30 that night, or I was going to get on a plane and head to New York for the press conference, and we had TV waiting. Back then, MLB Network was set up in my basement. Regardless, if I didn't get the call, I was still going to go on MLB Network. I know, I didn't care. I mean, it's not going to change my life. Yeah. But it was a cool experience to get the call and hear that I had been first time selected into the Hall of Fame. And my wife didn't know by the phone call what had happened. She's over there bouncing, going, I got off the call and I just said, I made it, like that. And she's like, what? I said, I made it. And I vowed early in life I would never let anything change me from a stature or from a level of accomplishments. And it was starting to slowly settle in when you're given 6 months to write a speech. There's a reason you're given that long, because how do you capsize everything that goes on in your career that we've already talked about and put it in a speech? Right. Well, I wanted 3 main goals to be able to talk about in my speech, and whether it went a little bit long or not, I wanted to create the opportunity to share a message at the one opportunity of one speech, to share a couple messages that were important to me as a human being, the people that had an impact in my life, but being a teammate and playing this great game of baseball and what that means. But more importantly, at the end, really talking about this Tommy John epidemic and the baseball world that parents were dealing with. I felt compelled that was a big opportunity for me. I was the first ever pitcher to get in the Hall of Fame with a Tommy John. Now, a position player got in. And, I would have made the claim, and I did make the claim then. I didn't think anybody else would, based on the rate of Tommy John and injuries that we're having now. But that being said, because there's so many Tommy John recipients, chances are there's going to be another one that gets in relatively soon. But that speech was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I repeated it, walked around my lake talking like a moron to myself. And I'm a from the heart type guy. My problem is, and I see why they ask you to do it, I veered from my speech for 2 minutes and missed one important aspect of thanking the greatest owner in the world of Ted Turner. That was I got away from the speech because I was telling a story, and when I went back to my speech, I missed that part, which I regretted. And in the press conference afterwards, was able to kind of say Ted Turner was the man. But to go in with the class that you mentioned that I went in will be ever for linked, and to just have Maddox and Glavine and Bobby the year before, I got the coolest experience, like a little kid, working for MLB Network when they got inducted. It's like seeing a sneak preview of a movie. You don't let your brain wander too much, but you're like, I wonder what that would be like next year.
Yeah.
I was playing at the Ohtani by myself while the ceremonies were going on after it was done. I was by myself in the most cool environment, playing golf after the induction happened. They're doing their dinner and everything. And so, just give you perspective, one of the security officers came rushing up on me and said, hey, what are you doing? Because you got to have the right credentials to be there. Didn't know who I was, but 1 year later, I was able to be part of that process, realizing that no matter how long I work for MLB Network, I will never be in that other chair come Hall of Fame, because I'll be up on the stage. So one of the coolest things to be part of, to think like.
Okay, dude, I have one super quick follow on that, because one of the best moments of my career, probably one of the biggest, was the day after you guys got in. I produced that show when it was all you guys, and we're sitting in the room getting ready to tell everybody what they're recording, and Pedro Martinez just stood up and he goes, I just have to say something very, very quickly first. I don't know if you remember this, John. He goes, there's me, there's Randy, I get it. And he said, but if I were standing next to God and I said, "This is how I want to build a pitcher," it would be John Smoltz. And I remember sitting there going,
Oh my God.
that was one of the coolest moments I've ever had in my career. And you guys to all go in, the three of you, it's just dumbfounding. You are three of the greatest ever to do it, all in the same year, that went through all the same emotions on the same day.
Well,
crazy.
You know, people ask me, wouldn't it have been better to go in with Maddox and Glavine? I said, not necessarily. You know, it really worked out great to do it in our own time frame because we never talked about going out together or doing anything together. And if you really think about the sizes of pitchers that were in my class, is a perfect example of there's no cookie cutter form. We had 6'11" or 6'10", 6'3", and then 5'11", all doing different things to be able to maximize each other's talents. And it was a perfect caption of really what baseball can be, right? And Pedro, of all the people I've ever faced, there's no one ever that I've seen that's nastier. I got fined in kangaroo court. I hurt my wrist on a check swing against Pedro Martinez. I got fined for hurting my wrist because he was so nasty, and I had such mad respect for what he was doing in our careers. I think we both were 2-2 against each other, and I was lucky enough to get a couple knocks off him. But yeah, that'll be a pretty cool lifelong kind of brotherhood when we know you're going to forget a lot of things in your life. I'm never going to forget who I went into the Hall of Fame with.
Smoltzy, I playing Major League Baseball, obviously 12 years, did some good things. I'm in the Reds Hall of Fame, and for me that's Cooperstown for me because I didn't have the numbers to get into Cooperstown. But when I cover Cooperstown for MLB Network, and I've been there, and I was there in your induction, playing the game and knowing how hard it is, and then seeing the 1%ers, the guys that are in Cooperstown, I think it's the hardest Hall of Fame to get into in any major sport too, obviously, because there's a lot of respect of the guys that go in. So for me, it's just one of the coolest places to be is Cooperstown. But for you now, Smoltzy, like being in Cooperstown, being one of the greatest pitchers to ever play the game, is there anybody in that fraternity when you show up at the end of every July, when you show up, are you still in awe of and you say to yourself, I can't believe I'm in the same club as that guy?
Oh, absolutely. I honestly believe I'm in the bottom rung, which is okay. Like I walk in there, and we've lost, unfortunately, so many Hall of Famers this past year. I mean, Hank Aaron, you know, the icon of the Atlanta Braves. But when I saw Sandy Koufax, and when I see guys that I go, I just can't even imagine that era, and just getting a time to talk to them and having that respect of a room. Look, it's no different than any other baseball team. You're going to have personalities. You're going to have flash. You're going to have a little bit of cockiness. It's no different. But I say this with all sincerity. I show up because I get to, not because I have to. And there's a difference between having to have the Hall of Fame to fulfill a void or fulfill something in your life. That is just a byproduct of getting to show up. I don't have to be a Hall of Famer. It's weird when I hear the name Hall of Famer John Smoltz, because I lived a life that I've had impacted, so many people have impacted my life that I don't need it. There's a lot of people that need it. And there's a big difference of having freedom and peace to show up and go, yes, everything you mentioned, it blows my mind, less than 1%, all that stuff. But when you show up and you get to experience and see people go through this process, that's what's pretty cool. I'm part of another team, but the reality is I get to go there and enjoy the moment of this historic pastime that has had so many before me pave the way, that it is just a privilege. And I don't know that that'll ever change. I don't care if I become an 80-year-old ornery Hall of Famer. If I do, I won't show, because that's not what it's about. And let me say this real quick. What Johnny Bench did, and it's so cool, because, you know, everybody's life comes full circle, and you hear parts of life that have a rough stretch or this or that. And Johnny Bench did something for us that I thought was going to be a little bit of hazing, and I was ready for the rookie treatment. And he says, I need 5 minutes of your time, and I need you up at the Otesaga, sitting in those rocking chairs. And I'm like, all right, something's going to happen, and I'm willing to deal with it. It's part of the deal. I'm the rookie. So all four of us sat down there. And Johnny always takes pictures and sends them. And he said something that was so cool. He said, all right, all I want you to do, stare out over the lake, take 5 minutes to realize what just happened. Take it in. Whole process, enjoy these 5 minutes because what is forever changed the rest of your life. It was really cool to just take we're getting ready to do pictures. We're getting ready. It's just a rash of emotions start going through your head. And when you take the time to just sit there, stare across that lake, and you start thinking about it, you're just in wow land. So pretty cool. He's done that to everybody. And, the process will have its stories, will have its moments. We had some funny things happen. But I will forever never forget. There's images that I will be imprinted in my mind forever. And it was this image when we were taking photos my rookie year. Of course, I want to be down there first. Every Hall of Famer has to come down to these bleachers. We were waiting on 3 iconic Hall of Famers, and they were up there, obviously, in their age and struggling physically. And it was Hank Aaron, it was Joe Morgan, and it was Frank Robinson. Unfortunately, none of them are with us. But they all had either a walker or some kind of cane, and it was taking them a little while to get there. And so they were going, come on, guys. And somebody started announcing it like a race. And I'm telling you, it kicked in with Hank Aaron. They did about 20 feet. You could see Hank Aaron kicking it in. And I'm telling you, he won. And Joe Morgan and Frank. But it was like this vision of these iconic baseball players have come full circle. Age has gotten them, but their heart and will and desire was still in that moment like, okay, all right. And I'll never forget that because they were such dignitarians of the past, whether it was good or bad for them. And Hank went through a lot to see this colossal of Hall of Famers that were there taking a picture. Pretty cool.
Oh, my gosh, man. This is unbelievable. That's what I mean. When you're in that kind of club, you have a story about Hank Aaron, Joe Morgan, and Frank Robinson, coming down the stretch.
Imagine this, Case. In the dinner, they got tables for each group of players.
Right.
They got the Punch and Judy hitters. These are Hall of Famers.
Right.
Punch and Judy hitters, over 500 homer hitters, over 300 victory table. Like it still exists. The competition and the adrenaline and all that still
so great. So great. Smoltzy, we got one last thing. We do this thing called 9 and 90, and Chinch is going to throw us some rapid fire things. It's two. What do we got, Chinch?
Yeah, you're always great at explaining this too.
I'm so bad at explaining that.
Rapid fire. It's like this or that. I'm going to go to Casey first. He's going to answer, and then just answer right off of what Casey does for everyone.
All right.
Okay? Ready? Okay, starting. Case, ready. Would you rather play baseball in 30-degree weather or 100-degree weather?
I'm from Pittsburgh, baby. 100 degree. 100 degree. It's the boys of summer.
100 degree.
Okay.
100 degree.
What would be worse, being stung by a bee every day for the rest of your life or stubbing your toe every day for the rest of your life, Sean?
I think getting stung by a bee every day the rest of my life, I just wouldn't like that.
Yeah, I'm going to say stung by a bee. I'm allergic and I swell up like the marshmallow man. So that wouldn't be good.
All right, tough one for Smoltz here, but you go first, Sean. Nicholas, Palmer, or Tiger?
Nicholas Palmer. I'm going to have to go with Palmer. He's a Pittsburgher. Guys, Arnold Palmer is the greatest ever.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I got to go with Tiger because I played golf with Tiger, and it was a blast.
Awesome. All right, worst chore, laundry or dishes, and do you do either?
Laundry or dishes? Yes, I do both, and laundry's definitely worse because I just hate folding it. Like, I don't mind doing it, but then I get it out of the dryer. I'm like, I don't want to fold this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I do both, but although I'm never allowed to do laundry again because I changed the color of some of my clothes. So I've eliminated that. So I'll say dishes because, I don't know. I don't mind doing the dishes. It just seems very cheap.
Nice. All right. You get a call from Jeff Bezos to be on the next Blue Origin space adventure. Are you going?
You know what? Can you ask me in 20 years I'm going? Right now, I don't think I'm going. I still got two girls at home. I'm not going just yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going either. That doesn't spur me on. That adventure doesn't spur me on.
Yeah.
What's more stressful, when your phone's about to die or when you're almost out of gas?
Oh, when you're almost out of gas. I almost happened to me this morning. I was going to work out. I'm like, 5 miles. I was like, uh-oh, and freaking pulled over, quick and loaded up. So get out of gas.
For sure, my phone's about to die because I never let gas get low, ever.
I see that about you.
Never.
All right, couple more. Would you rather be the funniest person in the world or the smartest?
Smartest person.
Funniest, for sure.
I kind of knew that answer was coming. Would you rather be the worst player on the best team or the best player on the worst team?
I'd rather be the worst player on the best team because I think at the end of the day, it's all about winning.
I agree. Ditto that.
Guys. All right, last one. This is my favorite. There's an alien invasion. You can save the world by sacrificing one of these two people. Who are you sacrificing? Greg Maddux or Tom Glavine? Sean, you first.
Wow.
Who am I sacrificing?
Yeah.
Probably Maddux because Maddux is, I've heard he's one of the craziest dudes out there, so he'd probably be all right with it.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'm going to say Maddux only because I've known Glavine longer.
The aliens, it seems like, might be scared of Maddux anyway. He'd probably fight him off.
Oh, my God, it's great.
All right. That's all we got.
That's it, man. Dude, thank you so much, Johnny.
Thanks, Smoltzy.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you up at the network here soon, brother. And good luck. Are you going to Cooperstown here soon?
Yeah, September 7th and 8th. Thankfully, they decided to do it in person. I was getting really anxious and not too happy about one of the most iconic guys in all of baseball history to not get his moment, at Cooperstown. At least they're going to have that.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. When Jeter goes in, it's going to be unbelievable. All right, Smoltzy, thanks a lot, man. Love you, brother. We'll see you soon. We'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks again, man. Thank you.
You got it, guys. Good talking to you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Great. It just it goes to show you how. You did it as a great professional baseball player. Like that next level up, and the stuff that goes through their minds is almost like at a next level than any of us, right?
Well, it was so good, man. Smoltzy's such a good dude. First off, as good of a player he was, he's as good of a dude. Right. And I think that's for me. I love that because I played with a lot of great players that weren't great dudes, and you're like, that kind of stinks, But when I look at Smoltzy and I go all the way back to the beginning of that interview, and we talked about Chris Verna, and he said he really helped him with his stretching, helped him with his shoulder, all that stuff, and then he played 21 years. Well, guess what? You don't get to Cooperstown without staying healthy. And for me, Smoltzy staying healthy and being able to put up numbers. He did get hurt, but he came back and then reinvented himself as a closer. Had over 200 wins as a start. It's unbelievable.
Crazy.
The impact that he had on the game as a starter and a closer is just absolutely unprecedented. Eckersley, has it a little bit, but wasn't as good of a starter as Smoltz was. So, and Chinch, I just loved, especially that last part talking about Cooperstown because for me, being a Major League Baseball player, playing 12 years in the big leagues and having a pretty good career, Cooperstown is just at another level of brilliance. And, when you're there and you're around those guys, and it was just so cool for Smoltz even to have that last story when he said, yeah, Hank Aaron, Joe Morgan, and Frank Robinson are all coming down for this picture. And it's
that was awesome.
Wow. That's just really cool. And it's just what a wonderful interview and a wonderful time with Johnny. And the guy is just such a smart guy. And and obviously we didn't even talk about, he's one of the best broadcasters out there too. When he does the games,
get there. Yeah.
He's one of the best. When he goes on with Joe Buck and does the World Series, man, you're like, you can't wait to hear what Smoltzy has to say. And when he does games of Aspersion, at the network and stuff, you're like, man, you've got two of the best right here. So the guy, everything he does awesome. I played him in ping pong. It's like an absolute. I'm like, all right, dude, are you serious? Like, he's just as serious in things like ping pong or whatever he does.
Yeah, well, when I first met him and he was making a transition to broadcasting, I said, wow, you're doing everything. You're doing a couple games, whatever. And he's like, no, World Series. I got to be doing a World Series. That's my goal. And his goal, again, everything goal orientated, but does it with such class and such, I respect that man. He's been great to me as a friend, and I'm sure to you too. And he cares. One other thing, he mentioned this early on. He cares violently about this game and loves it. And, every once in a while, he said it. He gets knocked for people think I'm a curmudgeon about it or I don't think it's being played well. He loves the game as much or more than anybody in the world, and he's just trying to be an ambassador for it, and I'm glad we have him.
Yeah, me too, man. And when he talks, I listen because he does a lot of great ideas, and just really cool. Johnny Smoltz, one of the best I ever played the game, and like I said, was a great guy.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, brother.
Oh, we did it again.
Did it again.
We're stretching the needle.
We're rolling, baby.
Yeah.
We're rolling.
Anybody out there want to pay us for this? We're
Yeah, right. I know. We're free.
Nah, dude,
Hey,
it's more fun.
I want to say too to all the people that join us live on nofilter.net when we do it every week. Appreciate you guys joining in, and for all the people on Apple and Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're finding us, we appreciate it. Download, subscribe, follow us. It helps us. It helps us a lot. So joining the mayor's office crew, and we just appreciate everyone. We're very grateful for everyone tuning in, and we hope you're having as much fun as we are, because I think if we had no listeners, Chich, we'd be like, who we got this week? This is going to be unbelievable.
My favorite day of the week. It's my favorite day of the week every week.
Me too. It's game time. Like, gets my juices flowing again. So it's great, man. But Chichi, I love you, brother. I appreciate it, and looking forward to next week and see who we can wrangle up. Yeah.
All right, man.
All right, brother. I'll see you, buddy.